It's the highest ever expected goals in a Premier League tie since these records began, 7.2 compared to Newcastle's 0.59. But the most important stat is that it's 3 more points for Liverpool, who are now 3 clear of Aston Villa in second. Mario Malkut joins us. Mario on, for once, not to discuss how rubbish Chelsea are. We'll talk to him in a moment. But Craig, overall, Liverpool were really good, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be really happy if I was Jurgen Klopp. Arsenal are stuttering. Obviously, City are the ones that everybody's still talking about. But defensively, their record is good this year. They're only second to Man City in terms of goals scored. And I know Núñez is a talking point. But there's still lots of other things in his play that are good. His finishing is not one of them at the moment. But if you look at the 3 main title guys, Liverpool, Arsenal and Liverpool.
Manchester City.
Manchester City. Liverpool still have that energy about them. You know, they just can... OK, there was a couple of slack moments in this game, but they just kept pounding away and pounding away. From the get-go, the pressing, not letting Newcastle out their half... Whereas you compare that to Arsenal, West Ham and Fulham, those games, it was pedestrian. The one thing you can't say about Liverpool, they are not pedestrian.
Stevie didn't watch the game with us. He watched it in a separate room because he was going to get angry. The first thing he says to me at the final whistle, I can't believe we conceded those 2 goals.
No, it's sometimes hard when you're looking at something through a certain way and you're trying to figure out the problems, as opposed... Because I think what's good about Liverpool is so obvious.
Right.
Craig just talked about it. I mean, when was the last time we saw a Liverpool side, from the first to the last minute, closing the ball down the way they did? It was back when they won the Premier League. And so we could sit here for 10, 15 minutes talking about how they created the chances, the movement, the passing, the chemistry, the strikes at goal, the saves at Dubravka. You know, we can do all that. But unfortunately... You've got to look at the game as a whole if you're Jurgen Klopp. And I'm kind of looking at it from his point of view. He will absolutely 100% be praising everybody, particularly the midfield and the forwards, for what they did going forward. But he will for sure be having a little word to his back line about the 2 goals he lost. But yeah, it was great stuff for Liverpool.
Mo Salah, once again, sensational, Mario. How would you fancy defending him back in your time?
It's so difficult because, you know, one of all, okay, we know the scoring record. You know, what is he now on? 151, I think he is now, scoring for one club. And just to stop him, he's capable to do a lot of things in the sense of, like, if you go tight to him, he takes the space behind you. If you drop off of him, he has the maneuver to go past you or take you inside and score a goal. And now the assist that he was making, you know, outside the boot, the way he delivers the ball, I think, you know, like, especially that first goal looks amazing. I was like, wow. But also the situation playing against Newcastle. If you look at the way Newcastle turned up, they were like, 4 at the back and then 5 in the middle of the park and had only Isak up front. So they came there defensively, but the way Liverpool went right through them in the middle of the park, it was like, I was even surprised that it looked very easy at certain passes what they were delivering and cutting through them. But it's not that easy because they have energy too. The way Liverpool plays high energy, but Newcastle plays at that kind of level too. But I felt like, no, this was, as an outsider, I definitely watched Liverpool play because they really played some good football today.
I really didn't think Liverpool could get to where they are at this moment in time from where they were last year. And that's a big credit to them.
Yeah.
I mean, I know City haven't been as good and Arsenal have less points than last year. But there's no doubt this is a completely different mindset from Liverpool now. The big question is, they've got 18 games left, because I think that's 20 they've played now. Can they keep it going? I don't see any reason why not. I know they're going to lose Endo, who's been pretty good last 2 or 3 games, in fact, very good. Mo Salah's going to be huge.
Yeah.
And not just the goals, but nobody, maybe only Kevin De Bruyne, plays those little disguised balls like he plays. You know, that little ball he played in for Jota. But the other side to this is Klopp's making good substitutions. You know, at 65 minutes or whatever it was 1-1, and, you know, off the bench, Gravenberch, Gakpo, but more importantly, a fit again, Diego Jota. And I think one of the differences for me is, and I don't know what the boys think, from Arsenal, who have got a big headache at the moment, is I think Liverpool have got better subs.
Yep.
I think when you see they can bring on the likes of Harvey Elliott, who can change games. And by the way, who would you? And we know Kai Havertz has been a big talking point. £70 million. Why wouldn't he be? I'd have Curtis Jones ahead of him.
Right.
Because he got a goal, but I'd have Curtis Jones because he makes things happen in the middle of the park. He gets on the ball. He drives forward. He's a homegrown player, and I think that's a big problem for Arsenal. And I think when you look at what Liverpool's got coming off the bench, depending on who he plays as a front three, I think Klopp has actually got more options in the forward department than what Arteta finds himself with. He talked about it after the game. He talked about the fact that what he liked about Darwin Núñez was how he occupied the two centre-backs with his runs, with his physicality, and it created more space for the others. Now, there's no doubt, and we've already mentioned it, when Salah goes away, then it becomes more problematic. But we only really discuss this if it dries up for the others and Liverpool start dropping points. I don't want to keep harping on about it, but we wouldn't sit here and talk about, is Zinchenko a bit of a weak point at left back when they haven't got the ball? Is Kai Havertz working in midfield? We wouldn't be discussing that if the other areas of the field were operating and Arsenal were winning, but they're not. So we're now looking at, they're not right in the middle of the park. There's a problem in that position, and I think only when Liverpool, if it starts to go wrong for them, and Diaz is not scoring and Jota's not scoring and Núñez is continuing to miss chances, if they're dropping points, it's going to be a big story. If they're not, Jurgen Klopp can say, well, look, he's working hard, he's running the channels, he's getting on the end of things, we're winning games, I'm okay with it.
What do you make of Núñez, Mario?
No, I like what the guys already tapped into. The downside for him is that, of course, the scoring is one of the key things. And, like Firmino, even when he was sitting in the stands watching him, when Liverpool, we were all enjoying them, was when all three up front were scoring. And, of course, Diaz gets his moments, and, even if one was called off. But for him now, the only thing what I do like about him is that he keeps on going. It does not matter. You have so many players, actually, that be in a situation now with him not scoring would be, on the other end and saying, you could not see him make the effort anymore. He's not producing certain things anymore. But he's now working on, if I can't score, I make sure my other teammates are scoring. And that's what he's creating. But there was one opportunity, Stevie called it, when he got the better of Bodman, because, one of the key things which you learn in England, you never let the ball bounce. When you let it bounce, and I felt like he picked that up really quickly as a foreigner coming into that league. The ball bounced, he pushes Bodman off and gets a one-on-one with a goalkeeper. That is moments as a striker, you have to finish it. It doesn't matter. It's not like he has to be scoring so many goals, but these are the goals that I would say to me is the other moments, he can be unlucky, but that moment, you got to finish it off.
What he can't do is do what we're doing, because I'm assuming the majority of us, when he goes through, at this moment, you don't know whether he's going to score.
Right.
If that ever creeps into his brain, then he's in trouble.
We can do without Salah.
Look, there's just no other way to say it than it's going to be difficult to get the goals that he gets. But the fact is, they've got players with ability that can produce enough goals to win games. And I don't think anybody can argue that. Now, the fact is they've got to now go and do that, but at least Klopp now has options on players who have ability, who will get into scoring positions. Unfortunately for Klopp, Salah's the one guy when he gets in a position where you know he's going to score. I don't suppose you can say that with anybody else on the front line.
Who's your front three? Sorry.
I would go with Diaz on the left. I would have Núñez up in the middle, and I'd have Jota on the right.
Right.
Yeah. I still think Núñez can come good.
I think I'd have it slightly. I think I'd have the same free ball, but I think I might have
Jota through the middle.
Jota through the middle as a sort of false nine, and I think we'll see Cody Gakpo doing that. It's not just the goals. You look at the 2 assists he had, and I mentioned it. That little. Now he doesn't. Quite often he plays these little passes and it hits somebody in the legs, but quite a lot of times it comes off. These little reverse slide balls, when he's not even in a wide position, he's actually quite close to the goal. He pokes these little balls through. I mentioned De Bruyne earlier. I don't even think he does that. He's more into playing these longer balls. I don't think anybody else in the league plays it as well and sees it as well and sees it as early. is Salah, so they're going to miss that with the outside of the left foot cross into the box for the Gakpo lucky finish off the studs, and that's what Núñez needs, something like that to go his way, because that wasn't exactly a clean finish. But it's not just the goals, and it's also the threat. If you looked at Newcastle and the way they started the game, they were so worried about Alexander-Arnold and Salah that Joe Linton was they had so much space on that side because he was so deep and he was coming inside, and so that kind of takes a little bit of a threat away as well. So it's obviously going to be huge.
Let's take a look at Liverpool's upcoming schedules, those games that Salah is going to miss. Obviously, Arsenal in the FA Cup third round, that's coming up this weekend. But in the Premier League, at Bournemouth, Chelsea, Arsenal and Burnley, potentially, this is, of course, if Egypt go all the way in the tournament. Obviously, a big miss, but is it a miss that Liverpool can get over, Mario?
It's going to be a tricky one, but the only thing is that we already talked about. They have some players in the team that can answer that problem. But look, he's the main goal scorer for them. He also gets them out of jail when there are difficulties going on, and that's also one of the key things what they're going to miss. But of course, you look, regardless if we talk, for example, of course, I'm going to highlight the Chelsea game, but the Arsenal game is one of the big ones too for them, because the way it's going now, they are behind you, and you don't know how Arsenal is going to react to this situation. But when they face each other, it's a huge game, and that's why, like we said already, Núñez. The thing that Klopp said about Núñez, and I agree. Like me playing as a defender, I would not want to play against a kid like that. And I'm going to tell you why. Because he makes you work. He runs. He does not stop. The only thing is when we jump, of course, that's why he's playing. He gets to score goals. But physically, and the runs that he makes, is almost, I look at him, I think he's not getting tired. But Szoboszlai came off in this game. And I don't know if he had a problem with his hamstring. Because that could be a big miss, because he's one of the key guys as well. I don't think this was one of his best games when I was watching him against Newcastle today. But normally, you understand, he's also the one that we're talking about outside the boot and finding players and setting people up. Oh, he's very good at it. Like, even if this is his first season, but the way he looks in that side, it looks like he's been there for so long. So that is also a question that they have. But as a team overall, I felt like they looking like they're gelling again, and they look very, very comfortable.
And Endo's fitted in quite well, Stevie, over recent weeks. You're going to miss him, obviously, going to the Asian Cup.
Yeah, he surprised me over the last 2 or 3 weeks. Initially, his first 2 or 3 games, I didn't think he looked as though he was good enough. But whether he's worked it out, whether Klopp's had a word with him, whatever it might be, he actually looks now as though he's a real part of the Liverpool machine. So, yeah, as well as Jones played today and as well as Elliott can play, there really isn't that grinder in the middle of the park that's going to do the job that he's been doing when he's away. So that's going to be a question mark, who does that role.
Well, McAllister's going to have to do it, and he's been out injured. His back and played a great ball, by the way, for the Jota penalty, and that's what he brings to the team. He did play at the start of the season that more defensive role, but we know that that's not what Klopp has bought him for, right? And that's one of the reasons they tried to get Caicedo in, they tried to get Lavia in, both went to Chelsea. Not working out too great for them at the moment. But McAllister will come in and do that, but he doesn't have the defensive nous that Endo has. Endo hasn't got the passing capabilities that McAllister has, and he doesn't have that grind that Stevie's talking about, where it's not as flashy. It's not. But then he's got others that can go and do that. But he was going about, and he was just getting into this groove about just breaking up the play and winning the ball and keeping it simple. And now they're going to have to figure out a different way of doing it. So McAllister will be that guy. Just defensively, he's not quite as good.
Meanwhile, for Newcastle, this, of course, part of a tough run. For, for Eddie Howe's side, Sunderland at the weekend, the FA Cup, they look gone today, didn't they?
Well, I think we have to stop making excuses for Newcastle now. I mean, it's been a good story to an extent, and they were a little unlucky in the Champions League. And yes, they've had a lot of injuries, and themselves and Tottenham and others, and we keep sort of harping on about it. But when you look at that first 11 and they still had some experience on the bench, quite frankly, they're in a run where it's just not good enough. And listen, excuses are not going to get you points. It's not going to save your job. Now, I'm not suggesting Eddie Howe is under immediate threat, but there are some stories flying around. That's just the nature of the business. And And yeah, I mean, I think defensively today, they just looked exposed. They looked really exposed at times by this Liverpool side. And he's got a lot of thinking to do.
Yeah.
A lot of thinking to do.
And of course, what you would want is a nice, easy tie for the third round of the FA Cup.
Yep.
Sunderland is anything but, given the rivalry between these two clubs.
Yeah, and I guess because it's Sunderland, Eddie Howe might not have any other choice but to go and play his first team.
He's got to, surely.
Well, I think he does because of the run they're on. But I still think, I mean, they're out of Europe. You know, they're getting players back. They've got some players back. I mean, we saw Botman was back, Byrne was back, but they're not at the level they were previously. Isaac's only been back 2 or 3 games as well. I still think this Newcastle team will get it right eventually.
Right.
I think there's enough games. I look at who's above them. I see Brighton, who you can't, you know, Brighton win or lose. Tottenham's a bit the same. Who else? Man United, a bit the same. You know, the question is, can Villa keep doing what they're doing? So, you know, I think there's still games that Newcastle can get themselves back in contention.
But they're 10 points off Spurs.
Yeah,
I know,
they're too far off Spurs.
Yeah.
If they put a run of 3 or 4 games together, then
There's nothing
they're
much
back
that
in
suggests they're
business.
going to, though, is it?
Well, if you look at the recent games, then I certainly couldn't argue with you too much. But I'm just saying that things are going to settle down for them. They're going to get some rest. They'll get players back, not just players back, but they'll be fully match fit. I still think Newcastle can put a run together.